So about 2 years ago, we got our Jeep Wrangler JL, almost about 2.5 years ago, and the first thing we did to it was add a Mopar Performance 2-inch lift kit to it. I gotta say, that was a really great time for us because we had never crawled underneath a JL. We knew that there were some things that had changed, but we had not had an opportunity to lift it, mess with anything suspension-wise, so it was a great opportunity for us here. You know, we installed the 2-inch kit, we did the Fox shocks, the coil springs, and all that, and this video is gonna be a recap of that and how to install that. You know, this video did great for us. It was pretty much the how-to video on the internet on how to put that on. So I'm super proud of all of us here at CJ's for getting that video out, especially us at the company, for being that how-to and instructional video for something that so many people watch, and I'm sure had on their phones, had on their TVs in their garages, drinking a couple beers. And I felt honored to be working with them at the same time. For me to be able to show you how to do something, there's nothing like it in the world to be on camera and to be able to walk you through the processes of how to install a part onto your vehicle. So that being said, we're gonna go through and show you guys the lift kit installation and what we were doing to our Jeep Wrangler JL over 2 years ago. So here you go, sit back and relax and check out this video. I'm Matt with CJ Off-Road, and if you're a Jeep owner, you already know what's inside this box. The factory suspension in your JL is great for the highway, but if you're looking to make it perform a whole lot better, then today we're going to be installing this Mopar 2-inch performance lift kit onto our 2018 Jeep JL 4-door Wrangler. This Mopar 2-inch lift kit is going to increase the lift height of your new JL and allow you to fit a larger tire on there. If you're installing this on a Sport or Sahara, you could probably fit about a 33 or 34-inch tire. However, if you're going to be putting this on a Rubicon, you can fit all the way up to a 35 or even a 37-inch tire with some mild trimming. Now this kit is going to include all 4 coil springs, 2 new control arms, 4 Fox shocks, all new sway bar links, bump stop extensions, and coil spring brackets. It's going to include all the necessary hardware for your JL, and it's going to really provide a nice clean kit that's going to get you up in the air without voiding your factory warranty. So today, let's get it installed on our 2018 Jeep JL Wrangler. Tools needed for this installation: a lift or jack and jack stands, 1/4-inch ratchet, 10mm socket, 1/2-inch ratchet, 13mm socket, 18mm socket, 21mm socket, 24mm socket, 1/2-inch box wrench, 13mm box wrench, 18mm box wrench, 21mm box wrench, and a trim removal tool. The first step of this installation is get your vehicle supported either by a lift or a jack and jack stands, and then we're going to start with the front end, get our wheels and tires pulled off so we can get to work. The first step is to get your axle supported, then remove the lower shock mount bolt. After you pull your hardware out, I like to keep it in the same spot. We're going to be reusing this with the new shocks. The next step is going to be to remove this sway bar link. It's going to use the same 19mm socket and open box wrench. I'm going to start by removing this lower link here. We're going to keep this hardware in the same place once again. Next step is going to be to remove this upper nut onto the stud. It helps if you use an impact, gets it off a little bit easier. Go ahead and pull this nut off the stud on your control arm. It holds on the bracket which attaches to your ABS and brake lines. You're going to reuse this bracket on the new control arm, so we'll pull it off now. Make sure you hold on to all the hardware you pull off. After you have the lower shock mount bolt removed, work your way to the top. This is actually an outboarded mount with a single stud. Go ahead and pull that off and you can completely remove your shock. Make sure you keep the hardware once again. On the passenger side of the vehicle, on the axle tube, you have your vacuum actuated disconnect. There's a little connector on the back here. Pull the red tab out towards you, push down and pull it out. We're going to actually remove the lines here by using a trim removal tool. That way when we sag the axle, it doesn't stretch these out and ruin them. There's a push pin right up here on the upper control arm bracket. We're going to get that one pulled out. There's another one right here on this little tab we're going to get out. We're going to remove the control arms now. There's an upper bolt here and a lower bolt that goes on your axle. They're going to use a 24mm socket and a box wrench. Pull the lower control arm bolts out. Pull the upper bolt out and remove the control arm. We're going to go ahead and lower our axle, that way we can get the coil spring out of the way. Push the coil spring up a little bit and it'll pull right out towards you. Remove this coil spring retainer from the bottom of the coil pad. This is actually a new feature with the JL. We haven't seen this before with the JK. They include a new one with a Mopar kit, so you can go ahead and set this one aside. We're going to install the new coil spring pads. There is a left and a right side. They're the new gray ones here. The driver's side is going to be the left side. It'll slide over and then snap into place into the back. Make sure it's fully seated down before you install the coil spring. To install the coil spring, start with the top, slide it over the bump stop post, and then lower the axle a little bit more if it doesn't clear. It helps put the bump stop extension inside the spring before you push it onto the lower perch. This allows you to not have to lower it as far, and it's in there and ready to go. That way you can put the nut on underneath. Make sure that the coil is properly seated into the pad. The end has a little notch and you'll see a little cutout on the pad. That's how you line them up on both sides. You have to put the nut on the bottom side of this bump stop extension. This is a small little nut that comes with a kit, and you slide it up there, and you actually have to feel for the threads, but they are up there. Might take a little bit to get to. You can twist this and kind of start it. It's a little bit tricky, but it's there. Once you get it started, you're pretty much good. Go ahead and tighten it down with a 1/2 inch socket. We're gonna go ahead and install our new control arms. Go ahead and use the shorter out of the 4 links. These are going to have a little bend that goes towards the outside, and the stud is going to actually go into the sway bar. Use the old hardware, the nut for the outside here. And then for the lower part, you're going to use the same hardware you had before. For the lower part, use the same hardware that you pulled out. Push the mount through, and then go ahead and put the nut on the back side, and we'll get this tightened up. We're going to go ahead and install our new Fox shock. Start with the upper bolt, then I'll work our way onto the bottom one. Go ahead and put your lower shock bolt through. This is once again going to use the factory hardware, that's why we hang on to it. And we'll get both of these tightened up. Reattach the ABS and brake line bracket onto the new control arm. This is where you're going to reuse the old nut that you pulled off your old control arms. Now we can tighten up our lower control arm bolts. We're gonna get these snugged up, and then once we're on the ground, we'll fully tighten them. That way we don't have any suspension bind. Go ahead and reconnect your vacuum disconnect on the front, push in the red pin. Repeat the exact same processes on the other side of the Jeep, then we're gonna move on to the rear. As you can see, we moved on to the rear of our JL. We have the wheels and tires pulled off. We're gonna get started. Got it supported by the lift, so let's dig into it. We've got the axle supported by our pole jacks here. We're gonna remove the lower shock bolt and the sway bar links. Those are gonna hold up the removal of the coil springs because it's not gonna let the axle droop fully. Let's get started with this lower shock mount. Same with the front, make sure you keep all your factory hardware as you're going to reuse it. Now we can remove the lower sway bar link. And then you can work on the upper one. In order to let the axle fully droop, you have to pull off this bracket here, which holds the ABS and brake lines in place. This bracket will have to go first, and then there's actually one behind the control arm here. Start up with this one, use a 10mm socket and simply back it off. Like I said before, a nice little trick is to actually thread these back into where they came out of, that way you don't lose them. In order to let the axle fully droop, you have to remove the bracket that goes on the frame, which connects your ABS and brake lines to it. In order to do that, remove the 10mm bolt, and I like to thread it back in once you're done. Go ahead and remove the upper shock mount bolt. lower the axle down with our pull jacks. That way we can pull the coil springs out and get started with the rest of the install. Go ahead and remove your coil spring. Make sure you keep the retention pad from up top. You'll use this with the new springs. Go ahead and put the retaining pad on top of the coil spring. There's a little nub here that's actually kind of like a locator. That goes onto the left side of the top perch. We're gonna put it in now. It's a little bit tricky to get it in there. We're going to install the bump stop extensions here. They use an angled edge, and this edge is going to face towards the front of the Jeep, while this will be towards the back, so it'll twist like this, slide right onto the perch here, and then you're gonna get 2 nuts and 2 bolts that are provided. Simply drop them through, then we'll put the nut on the bottom side. Put the extended sway bar links on. You're gonna want the little bend to go towards the inside of the Jeep. This stud will go on the top here. Drop it down through, push the stud in. Use the factory nut on the back. Put the factory hardware back into the lower mount. Now we can tighten it all up. We're gonna get the shock mounted. Start with the upper bolt and then we'll move on to the lower. Go ahead and put the lower bolt in. It's going to use the same factory bolt that you pulled out. Get that tightened down. Once you have everything else tightened up, be sure to reattach your brake line and ABS bracket and use the original bolt to tighten it up. Repeat the same steps on the other side and your installation is complete. That completes the installation of our 2-inch lift kit on our new JL Wrangler. This Mopar Performance Kit is a great lift for your Jeep, and it's going to allow us to fit a little bit larger of a tire and let us perform better on the trails. Now you can find this performance lift kit as well as many other great parts for your new JL right here at cjponyparts.com.